Hey everyone, Mark from Bendorite Games, and I'm here to talk to you about chaotic attractors. Now what's on the screen right now is called the Lorentz attractor. It was discovered by a man named Lorentz in 1961 when he was running weather simulations. The computer that he was using only displayed 3 digits of precision, but it actually used 6 digits of precision to calculate. What happened was he ran a simulation, recorded one point of the simulation, then reran the simulation a second time, but only using 3 digits of precision instead of 6 digits, and the results were wildly different between the 2 simulations. And that kicked off the whole field, which is called chaos theory. Now, there are more than just the Lorentz attractor. I'm going to show, let's try the Lorenz Mod 2. This is very similar in terms of being in the same family as the Lorentz attractor, but as you'll see in a second, it has a completely different behavior. If you notice down here in the bottom left, I have the equations that are used to generate the chaotic attractors. And as you can see, this is wildly different from the Lorentz attractor. I'm betting that most of you out there have not seen a lot of the other chaotic attractors that are in this program, but that's exactly why I've put this program together so that you can take these and explore them. I do have camera rotation so that you can change which direction the camera will rotate and how fast, but if you don't want that, you can also just click and drag to move to different angles or set the camera rotation to the middle, so that it doesn't automatically rotate. I've also added the option to have multiple points. What this does is it spawns multiple points at almost the exact same spot. They deviate by about 1/10,000th of a unit. To give you an idea, the original Lorentz attractor that I was using before has a total region, a sphere of attraction, about 30 units across. So think of it as the points deviate by about 1/30,000th of a screen widths apart. So 1/30th of a pixel. And already in the time that I've been talking, the various points in this attractor have already dispersed themselves. Now, a way to define chaos, and probably the simplest way to define chaos, is that the exact present predicts the exact future, but the approximate present does not predict the approximate future. In other words, all of these points started at almost the exact same point, but if I asked you, tell me 10 seconds down the line, approximately, will it be on this half or this half? Well, as you saw, half of the points went to one half went to another half, even though they were separated by only about 1/30th of a pixel. So the approximate present does not predict the approximate future. Now, as you can see, the tail is starting to disappear as time goes on. That's to prevent the screen from getting too cluttered. You can decrease the tail length to keep it much less cluttered, or you can increase the tail length to just see what it looks like over a great amount of time. One of the other interesting features that I've added is sound. So I'm going to switch back to the Lorentz attractor, and I'm going to add sound and then trigger multiple points so that you can hear what it sounds like. Part of me thinks that this should be renamed to the Wow attractor. Now, the way that the pitches are determined is I calculate out the average velocity of each of the points, and from that, if it is above the average velocity, then I increase the pitch. If it's below the average velocity, then I decrease the pitch. And the amount that it is above or below the average velocity, that changes how much the pitch changes. So let's change to a different attractor and see how that one sounds different and looks different. Let's switch over to Dangerous. Now, as you can see, this one sounds significantly different from the Lorentz attractor. In particular, as they get close to the center here, they move very, very slowly, and as they get further away, they move much, much, much faster and make a very high-pitched squeal, practically. So anyway, those were a couple of the main attractors, but let's switch over to something a little different, the swinging Atwood machine. Actually, first let's go to the N-Pendulum. This is something that most of you should be familiar with, and this is called the double pendulum. It's just two rods connected to each other. This is the multiple points version, so again, separated by about 1/30th of a pixel, and already they're starting to separate. This is another very well-known example of chaos in action, and it's very simple. What I've also added, though, is the ability to have multiple segments, not just 2 segments, but up to, I think, 20 segments. So I'm going to turn it down to just 1. Also, when you only have 1 point, I've added each segment tracks its own path, but only the final one is colored. So let's switch over to a 10-segment pendulum, or a 10-pendulum. And as you can see, it traces out a very different path from just the 2-pendulum or the double pendulum. So this is another thing to experiment around with, and the swinging Atwood machine. Now, there's a lot going on here. The equations are significantly different. This is the change in radius, change in momentum of the radius, change in theta, and change in the momentum of theta. Over on the right here is a mass. And what this originally was for, this machine was originally for, is 2 masses connected with a series of pulleys, which is what these corners represent of the blue line. And over on one side is a mass that is larger than the mass on the other side to create a constant acceleration. What happens is if you swing the smaller mass, as it gets closer and closer to the center, it spins around that center point or that center pulley faster and faster, which increases centrifugal force, which is another way of saying center fleeing force. That's how I remember it. And as the centrifugal force increases, then it pulls the larger mass up and eventually overcomes gravity before it starts getting pulled back in, and the process repeats over and over again. As you can see, this isn't a periodic orbit, but it has a certain shape to it. But in this machine, there are periodic orbits, the simplest of which occurs at mass ratio of 1.665. So let's switch to that. And this is going to be a fascinating shape for you, a smiley face. Very, very simple. But if we use these sliders here, I'll just set it to something random. And this will trace out a figure that I have probably never seen. I've seen things probably similar to it because I've tinkered around with this a lot. But there are a lot of different possibilities and a lot of different shapes that this can make. That's why I've included the sliders for you to mess around with. But I've also included some interesting ones for you to look at, such as this one. I believe that this one is periodic but asymmetrical, and it takes probably a minute or two for it to start to repeat. I've also included the ability to have multiple points. I remove all the pulley stuff because it ends up being a little bit too much going on. And instead of deviating from 1/10,000th of a unit, I have the mass ratios deviate by about 1/10,000th of a unit. So again, this mass ratio is 41. So the mass ratios of these various points are going to deviate by about 0.0001. So if you want to check out the approximately 20 or so various chaotic attractors that I've included in this and tinker around with the various settings of the swinging Atwood's machine, the link is in the description. Again, it's donationware. If you want to buy me a coffee, it's much appreciated. Otherwise, it's completely free if you want. And I hope that you guys have as much fun tinkering around with all the settings and learning about how they sound and look as I have. Again, I've had a lot of fun developing this. I've spent many hours messing around with the swinging Atwood's machine in particular, and I hope that you have as much fun with it as I have. Until next time.